a contradiction, they may get confused in this scenario, how to do the sample size estimation, whether we have to do a sample size estimation for the research. So, in today's session, our objectives of the session is why we need to determine the sample size, and what are the factors involved in determining a representative and adequate sample size, and use of formula to determine sample size, or how we do assess the sample size. So these are the factors we are considering today's session. And where this question arises, like how many subjects do I need to consider in my research study? Usually when a researcher plans to do a research, for the initial step is he will explain the for research problem, or what he is going to prove. That research question he will define first. After that, he will do some literature reviews and all to get to know the background of the research, and then he have to define the methodology he should follow for his study. So in that methodology part, he should explain who is the population for his study, and what is the time duration, what is the duration of the study period of his study, and how do he select the samples from the population, and how many samples he needs to consider in his study. So here we need to do the sample size estimation for a better outcome. So, how many samples? What is the minimum number of subjects we should include to get an accurate estimate, to give an accurate estimate about the population? That's why we go for a sample size estimation, and how to assess the sample size estimation. That is what we are going to check. So, for the determination of sample size, when conducting a quantitative research, it is very important to determine the sample size for the study. Samples need to represent the target population you plan to study. That means the sample should be a representative part of the population, and the sample size calculation should be done before we set off to collect any of our data. So, we should calculate the sample size before doing the data collection. That is necessary for a good research study. Actually, as a statistician, my personal experience I am sharing with you all. I had many experience, like many of the researchers came to me after completion of their research, they need to do a sample size estimation. Why? Because after the submission of the study, either the university or the journal they plan to publish their article asked them to show the sample size estimation procedure. So that time they came to us for the sample size estimation. That is not a good tendency, because this sample size estimation shows how to do a good research, or how can we give a good estimation about the population. So that is what our sample size estimation is given to us, and so that we need to do it before the data collection. And almost all the researchers generally like to work with large sample size. However, it is not always feasible, especially for students, such as time, money, resources, etc. So it is good idea to assess your need before any real research takes place, to determine or how many participants you really need before planning a research study. Sample size determination is the act of choosing the number of respondents in a sample, and the sample size is an important feature of any research study, in which the goal is to make inferences about the population from the sample. A representative, how to determination of sample size is continued. A representative sample is a small number of respondents that accurately reflects the population from which respondents are selected. So a sample is called representative when a small number of people accurately reflect the number of an entire population. So this is the reason random selection is given more attention, because the representative sample is needed in order to generalize from that specific sample to the population. So a random selection used to obtain a sample that resembles the population. So it's better to go for a probability or random sampling technique for selecting the samples, because the sample should be the representative part of the population, and this random sampling help us to obtain the exact representative part of the population. So also there is some misconceptions about the size of the sample. Like many researchers believe that the sample should be a proportion, like 1%, 5%, or 10% of the population. So according to them, the size of the sample depends only on the size of the population. That's a misconcept actually, and some researchers say that a sample should be total about 500. Irrespective of the size of the population, they believe that they should go for a higher sample size. And there are some researchers who are of the view that any increase in the sample size will increase the precision of the sample results. As a consequence, they advise the size of the sample as large as possible from whom the researcher can collect the data. So these are some common misconceptions we used to follow in determination of sample size. What about the sample size? What would be the sample size of a research study? So sample size is determined after considering a number of factors. Some of the factors are here. First one is the degree of accuracy. The next is the degree of variability or diversity in the population, and the number of different variables examined simultaneously in the data analysis. It's also kept in mind that the more homogeneous the population, the smaller would be the sample size. And the larger the number of variables to be studied, the larger will be the sample size. So in that homogeneous population, the variability will be less, and so it is very easy to make an inference about the sample. So if it is less sample also, we can do a correct estimation that the population is homogeneous. That is what it means. Okay. And before doing the calculation, sample size estimation, we have these following points in our hand, like our research question, and we should have a study design, feasibility and costs of the study, and we should define the types of outcome measures. Because while planning to a research question, if we do the sample size, first one we are considering as a factor as the primary objective of the study. What is the main focus of the present study? That is what we are searching for. So research question, we should have a clear idea about the research question or testing what hypothesis we are going to test. Next is study design. That is also very important for the sample size estimation, because if we are doing a cross-sectional study, we need only one group for the estimation. So here we may do the calculation in a different way. We need to obtain the sample size for a single group. And suppose if we do a case control study, there we need to find the sample size for two groups. What is the number of, how much is the number of cases, and what is the number of controls we need to take. So that which study design we are following also very important. And we have options while we do sample size estimation. We have options to change the sample size, like if we change the some parameters we are considering to assess the sample size, like error levels, statistical error levels, precision. These all parameters we can vary accordingly. So depends on that. With the high precision and minimum error, we may need to take more samples. And if we are not able to include more samples in our study, or we know that maximum or approximately this is the range of number of samples we can include in our study. So in that case, we can change that error levels and all that may help us to reduce the sample size. So we need to check whether we can obtain the estimated sample size, or otherwise we need to modify the sample size estimation process. So next is define the types of outcome measure. That also very important. Like what is the expected outcome, whether it is qualitative or quantitative. That also very important while we do assess the sample size estimation, because the formulas, the methods we follow are different for both quantitative and qualitative. That will be different, and guess that likely result. What result we are expecting. That also we should have a clear picture before do the calculation of sample size. So let's see how to determine the size of the sample. Some important terms related to the process of determining the size of the sample are, first one is target population. So what is target population? So in a research study, this refers to the aggregate of people related with the research problem. For an example, if the study is on discrimination against working women in unorganized sector, the population will include all the women on whom the researcher intends to generalize his or her research findings. So this is where this may be this is the target population, which the researcher refers to the aggregate of people related with his research problem. That is called the target population. And next is sampling frame. So in a research study, this refers to the people from which sample will be selected. So from where we are taking the samples, that frame is called sampling frame, and the representative part or subset of the target population is called the sample. Next concept is margin of error. So, margin of error is about the degree of uncertainty in statistical outcomes. So, how much error we can allow in our study? What is the maximum allowable error in our study? We would like a mean of our data to represent the mean of the target population. The margin of error tells us how much higher or lower than the true value will we let our sample mean occur. So, this is called the margin of error. And next, usually we fix the margin of error as or allowable error of the study as 5%. So 5%, up to 5% error can be obtained between the population mean value and the sample value. This is what our assumption while we fixing up the margin of error, or we give an level of allowable error. Next is confidence interval. So in medical researchers, confidence interval is usually set at 90%. We have three levels we are usually fixing up as 90%, 95%, or 99%. So it tells us how confident we are that if the study was repeated again and again, we would get the same results. So how confident the researcher in his results. So if confidence level is 95%, suppose if it is 95%, we would get the same results in 95% of the cases. That is what this confidence interval says. And while doing the sample size, what are the basic components we consider is, first one is primary outcome measure and variability. So I already mentioned that while doing a sample size estimation, we are considering the primary objective of the research. So in that primary objective means the main focus of the study we explained as a primary objective, and what is the outcome, primary outcome we are considering. So that is called that is first we need to consider, and from where we will get the primary outcome value, or how do we know the observation of this primary outcome. It can be obtained from a pilot study. If we are going to do an innovative study, we don't have any literature background or any other, we don't have any other study to refer, then we can do a pilot study, and from the results of that pilot study, we will be able to estimate the sample size for the main study. So this usually for this pilot study, we will take 10 to 15% of the population size. We may know the population size. So usually we will take 10 to 15% of the population for the pilot study. There is no such rules to take this much should be there in the, this much percent should be there in the pilot study. Like that, nothing is there. Where usually we are considering this 10 to 15% pattern. And otherwise, we can take the results obtained in a mother study or similar other studies in the literature. From the literature or published article, we can take the primary outcome of our study. Okay. Then we are considering three factors. One is type 1 and type 2 errors we are fixing, and power of the study we are look up, and decide precision of the estimate. So these we are going to coming next slides have explanation for these factors, and which type of outcome is expected in a study. So that outcome can be proportions or averages or rates or etc. So suppose if we are expecting an outcome which is a proportion, like this suppose an example, in a trial of a new measles vaccine, an outcome measure of interest may be the proportion of vaccinated subjects who develop high levels of antibodies. So here we consider the prevalence or proportion of vaccinated subjects who develop high levels of antibodies, and here we have only one group, and we are considering the proportions for the as an outcome measure. So next one is an example for means. In a trial of an anti-malarial intervention, it may be of interest to compare the mean at the end of the malaria season among those in the intervention group and those in the comparison group. So here we have two groups, and we are giving a trial for an anti-malarial intervention, and we are comparing the mean PCV at the end of the season. So we are comparing the mean PCV value of both groups, and here we are comparing the two quantity, like two averages we are comparing. So this is the case of averages or quantitative comparison. And here is one more type like rates. Suppose if we have in a trial of multi-drug therapy of leprosy, the incidence rates of relapse following treatment may be compared in the different study groups under consideration. So here we may compare the rates between more than two groups. So these are situations, how do we do the sample size estimation? So while doing the sample size estimation, we need to we need to focus on two types of errors which may occur. First one is a type 1 error and other one is type 2 error. This is we already discussed in the introduction part of inferential statistics. Like these two types of errors are possible in any study. Like suppose if we here we have an example for a false positive and or type 1 error and type 2 error. Actually, when the reality is can be a not pregnant case or pregnant case, and the diagnostic test also can be pregnant or came as pregnant or not pregnant. When the reality, if the man is not pregnant, that test result is like he is pregnant, then we can say that it's a false positive. The diagnostic test gives a wrong positive information or false positive information. Actually, he is not pregnant, and the test result came as pregnant. This is called the type 1 error, which is a false positive. And when he is not pregnant, that result also came as pregnant. We can say that it is correct decision. The decision is correct, which is correct negative. The diagnostic test came as negative, which is the correct decision. And while coming to the reality as like here she is pregnant, and the result also came as pregnant, that is correct positive, which is called as the power of the test. How much, what is the probability of taking a correct decision? That is called the power of the test, or the power of the diagnostic test. And here we correctly identified the result, and which is called the correct positive or correct decision. And when the reality is pregnant and the result came as not pregnant, we named it as false positive, which is called the type 2 error or beta error. So type 1 error, we denoted it as alpha, and type 2 error, we denoted it as beta. And while coming to the power of the study, to find out whether a significant difference exists between two groups, if the true difference exists, power of the study indicates that the probability of finding a statistically significant difference between the two groups. So, power of the study correctly identify whether any significant difference is occurred, or if there is any significant difference between two groups. And the precision is also named as, which we already discussed, that as allowable error or acceptable error is called precision. Usually we fix the precision level as 5%. In usual studies, we fix this precision level as 5%. So 5% errors we are allowing in usual studies. So as a summary of the components we consider for sample size estimation, we should consider alpha error, beta error, power, and minimally clinical difference. Clinically significant difference, or clinical significant difference means that observed difference between observed difference in pilot studies or literature we observed in the study group. That is called the clinical significant difference. And the variance, if we are considering the variability, we should take the variance of the population. And what are the methods we use to estimate sample size? These are some situations we use to estimate sample size. We have only one population and the outcome is a proportion. So here we need to compute the sample size estimation for proportion, one sample proportion and one sample mean. Also, we may have two proportions, and other suppose it is a quantitative data, we need to compare the difference between two means. And while coming to the analytical studies, our outcome measures, so these methods are based on the outcome we are considering in our study. So suppose if in the analytical study, we are considering the odds ratio, or if our primary objective focus on the correlation, or if we are doing the sample size estimation for randomized control trials and all, we have different methods for estimating sample size in these third situations. So here I have some common concepts, common formulas, and along with the examples, we are explaining the formulas. This is a formula. Usually we do an sample size estimation. This is a widely used formula for sample size estimation. Actually, for any study, we can't do this. We can't take this formula. It purely depends on the study design and the number of groups, and also the nature of the outcome variable, whether it is quantitative or qualitative. It depends on that. We are deciding the formula. And this formula we use most of the studies, because of if we are when we do this formula is like if we are going to do a cross-sectional study or a single group study, and the outcome is a proportion, or if we are outcome is a quality or proportion, then we can use this formula for sample size estimation. So here the formula is n is the number of sample size we need to find out. So n is equal to 4 pq by L square. This is the commonly used formula. This p denotes the estimated prevalence or percentage, which it can be a cure rate or a knowledge level of knowledge or something. So this estimated prevalence or percentage will be the outcome variable. What is the outcome? That is called the prevalence or percentage. This can be obtained from a pilot study or published purpose. We can obtain this prevalence or p-value. This as it is a percentage, p plus q will be 100. So if we know the p, q is equal to 1 minus p, because p plus q is equal to 100, and L is known as the allowable error. Usually we fix as 5%. We can possibly fix up to 20%, 5%, 10%, 50%, and 20%. These are the ranges we usually fix as allowable error. So here we have some worked out examples for the sample size estimation. Suppose if we are going to do a descriptive study, and our data is qualitative and we are considering only one group, then how we do the estimation of sample size? That is what we are going to see. Our problem is calculate the sample size to estimate the prevalence of hypertension in a geriatric population if pilot study estimate is 40%. And they also given that alpha type 1 error is 5% and type 2 error is 20%. That also given in the problem. So how do we do the sample size estimation? Because the problem says that in the among the geriatric population, hypertension seems in 40%. Prevalence of hypertension observed as 40%. So this is the outcome. Prevalence of hypertension is the outcome, which is a quality, and we have the type 1 and type 2 errors. And how do we obtain the sample sizes? With the help of a mathematical relationship, we can estimate the sample size. This is the method how we calculate this, came to this formula. That is what, how this formula is obtained. That is what we are going to see. So this is a mathematical relationship that level of type 2 error is equal to 2 standard error. This is a mathematical relationship. This standard error concept also we had discussed earlier. So while for the formulation of this formula, we can equate level of type 2 error is equal to 2 standard error. We can denote this level of type 2 error as L. We denoted it as L, and L is equal to 2 standard error. And we are squaring that both sides, and we got 2 square as 4, 2 SC square. The formula for standard error for one sample proportion is root of PQ by N. This is all well-defined formula for standard error. If we are calculating one sample proportion, so the formula for standard error is root of PQ by N. So when we square the formula, we got it as for PQ by N. Thus we got that sample size. This is what we are searching for, N. N is the number of samples, so we need to find out N. So for that we can equate these two observations, like NL square is equal to 4PQ, and we keep this N here, and then N is equal to 4PQ by L square. This is how this formula obtained. So here we have the prevalence of hypertension geriatric as 40%. That is already given in the population, the problem itself. So 4 into 40, and this Q will came as 60. How it came means that I said that P plus Q is equal to 100. So maximum is 100. So already P is 40, then balance will be 60, because 100 minus P is equal to 60. And L is the allowable error. So this the result we obtained as 40%. What is the allowable error for the set result? So we are estimating max 20% of error. Type 2 error we kept as 20%. So we are allowing 20% of error in the prediction result. So L is the allowable error. So L is equal to 20% of P. So it came as 8. Thus, we calculate the sample size as 150. This is the manual method of do sample size estimation. And usually when we do sample size estimation, we are getting the minimum sample size we consider for the study. This is the minimum sample size we are required for the study. And we can include maximum possible sample in the study. So that sample size can be fixed as 160 as well. And suppose if we consider a quantitative data, like if our outcome is a quantity and we are considering only one group, in this situation, like in a study, it is proposed to estimate the mean knowledge score on prevention of HIV or AIDS in the community. From the pilot study, the standard deviation of knowledge score was estimated as 1.5. So we need to calculate the sample size if alpha error is 5% and beta error is 10%. Here we have the standard deviation, which shows a standard deviation of mean knowledge score, which shows a quantity. Okay, so how we do the sample size? Here also we consider the same mathematical relationship, and the formula for standard error for a quantitative one sample mean, it is SD by root n. So here also we have that n which we want to find out. So here when we equating the same process we are doing here also, and while equating n is equal to 4s square by l square. So here we got the sample size as 400. Here the L value will consider as the 10% of SD, as it is mentioned in the problem that beta or type 2 error is 10%. So here the sample size obtained as 400. So this is also the minimum sample size required for this study. And this coming to an analytical group, like if we have two groups, and if we want to, the outcome is qualitative, and if we want to compare the
Excuse
percentages
me.
of,
Can I ask a question, please?
yeah, tell me.
Yeah, this is related to the model number 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. In that it is like if we have, suppose we want to work on a project in which we are finding out a mutation, suppose a BRAF mutation in PTC, papillary thyroid carcinomas. Okay. So in this, the population will be papillary thyroid carcinomas. Am I right?
Okay. Yeah.
Or it will be the BRAF positive patients in, sorry, it will be PTC, okay, papillary thyroid carcinoma. Now, can you go back to the previous slide, one slide back?
Okay.
Yes, here it is written that P is equal to estimated prevalence or percentage, which we can either get from a pilot study or any published paper,
yes,
right? So if we are finding out a mutation in a particular cancer, then P would be the percentage of prevalence of that cancer in our.
Actually, I didn't get the exact idea, because as we are not a medical person, while we listening to this,
I'm talking about, suppose I have to find out one mutation, a particular mutation in breast cancer patients. Okay. So I suppose that the prevalence P will be here for breast cancer. Am I right?
Yes. It's actually
Sorry for interruption. This is Dr. Eben Thomas. I think
yes,
I can answer your question. So
yes,
that
sir.
P represents the expected mutation among those population, because your population is 100% and they are cancer patients, like
Yes, sir.
for any sort of cancer.
Yes,
So
sir.
P is actually the percentage of mutation which we are expected to see in that population,
Okay,
and L square will be calculated from that P, corresponding to that P.
Okay,
So
sir.
it is
And
actually
suppose we are finding out, we usually refer to the published paper to get an estimate of that mutation when we are working. And suppose we are getting it in a bigger range, like 14% to 60% in some papers. Then how will we come to P in that case? How will we fix the P percentage in that case?
There are so many approaches to solve that problem. Normally, the best way is to fix the highest percentage as a benchmark in our scenario, because highest percentage will result in a higher sample size.
Percentage give maximum sample size that we need to consider.
Highest percentage in the sense, if it is less than 50%, then take the highest percentage. If it is more than 50%, then take the lowest percentage, because at 50% we have the most uncertainty in estimation. So we will get the maximum sample size in 50%. So whichever proportion is near to 50%, we usually take that proportion as a benchmark when we are estimating the sample size for a proportion. And another thing is, like, we can actually conveniently take an average of this these percentages, or the proportion which is described in the latest study. So there are different approaches to solve this problem, but it completely depends upon our convenience on which one to choose.
Sir, in this case, how will we find out the allowable error?
It would be, normally it is 5% above and 5% below we usually take. So normally it is 5% we take. So will be around 10% of that specific population. Suppose if you are in your scenario, you have we have 16% prevalence, you said.
Yes,
So
sir.
5% of 16% would come around 1.6 times. So it would be very small number. So 10% is 1.6 percentage, 5% is around 0.8 percentage. So yeah, so
Okay,
that
sir.
is, yeah. So the precision is completely depends on you. So how it influence our result is like, if we have a proportion of 90%, suppose 90 or 95% prevalence in certain scenarios, it is okay to estimate a number between 98 and or if it is 90%, then it is okay to estimate number between 80 to 100%. You see what I'm saying? But if it is less than 10% or 5% or 2%, we don't have that much liberty to take wider ranges. You
Okay,
understand what
sir.
I'm saying? Suppose if it is 16% and we are saying our expected interval should be 5% to 25%, or for 6% to 26%, this would be completely the precision would be very less from a it's always preferred to have a smaller width, which will eventually give you a larger sample size. That is actually another drawback of that issue. So the smaller the width you consider, the larger the sample size will be. But it is always preferred to estimate a smaller interval with when it comes to the lower percentages, and we will give some sort of liberty when it goes to the higher percentages, like 60 or 70 percentages. Yeah. So this is a common
Okay,
practice.
sir. Okay, sir.
Uh,
Thank you so much.
I think that that is I think your query would have been answered by now. It was a clear description. I would like to add on one point here, especially when it comes to such studies where you're studying mutations and all. It would be a good idea if you can consider if there are any Indian studies, Indian literature, that would be a representative for your population. So if possible, first good journals, you have to do a PubMed based, like some good journals, index journals, you have to first look at that and then see if you can find any Indian studies, because that will be more representative or more closer to what you're going to study. So that is one small thing which I would like to mention. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, like which study that also, like if which if we have any study which done on the near future, that also we can consider. That also we can prefer. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Then coming to the analytical study methods, like if we have two groups, like so, hello, any other questions?
No, thank you.
So, while coming to the analytical study, if we have two groups and we want to compare two proportions, it's how do we do the sample size estimation is like we have an example here, like in a clinical trial, the following results are obtained from pilot study, or which is reported in some similar study or from the mother study. Group 1, that is treatment group, is 60%, cure rate is 60%, and for the control group the cure percent is 40%. And in this study we are considering the alpha 1% or type 1 error 1% and beta 5%. So how do we do the sample size estimation? So here we have the formula n is equal to m p1 q1 plus p2 q2 by d square. This m is a multiplying factor for the sample size estimation, and here we have one table for the assessment of this multiplying factor. So for that value of that multiplying factor, we are considering whether it is a one-sided test or two-sided test, and what are the levels of alpha or beta we are considering. From this table, we can obtain the value of the multiplying factor, and we can add this value for the calculation. So here we have that P1, that treatment group value was 60%, thus Q1 will obviously 40%, because P1 plus Q1 is equal to 100. So thus P1 is equal to 60, Q1 will be 40, and P2 is equal to 40 here, and thus Q2 is equal to 60. So thus we applied this formula, these values in the formula, we obtained the sample size as 213.6. And for that same way, this is an example for two group comparison of sample mean. So if we want to do an analysis of two groups with the outcome is, suppose if the outcome is quantitative, how do we do estimate the sample size? This is an example for that sample size. That formula is n is equal to 2ms square by d square. This m is the set multiplying factor only, and S is the pooled standard deviation, and D is the clinical significant difference we have between the mean observed in both the groups. So this is all about this is not the all methods that I didn't explain, and this is some common methods we usually used to do. And one point we should remember, that we are calculating the minimum sample size while we do the sample sizing estimation, and if possible we should take a maximum sample as possible, and please care about that we don't take less samples than we analyzed, that we should consider. And we, for the estimation of sample size, we have some softwares here. I listed only few like Nmaster, GPower, IPA, etc. The sample size softwares help us to do the accurate estimation of sample size. And as a conclusion, the investigator should first focus attention on a few key outcomes for calculating sample size. Statistical methods are available for estimation of appropriate sample size depending upon the type of outcome measure, expected disease rate, size of FS, study design, and requirements of confidence interval or precision or power. The procedure for sample size estimation provide a rough estimate of the required study size. So this is all about, this is just a basic concept. Here we discussed only the basic concepts of sample size estimation. And if we do know more, we should take the help of a statistician also while we do the sample size estimation. That will be a better option. So if you have any questions or queries, please ask.